Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yato Nivyad Itaratas Chartesu Abhigya Swarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhika Vaye Muyanti Atsudaya Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misham Damna Srina Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality Godhead, offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the demigods, the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water. By him, even the great sages and only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma projita kartrovotra paramo nimatsaram satam vedam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapatrayon mulam Srimad Bhagvate Mahamani Krite Kimva Purer Ishvaraha Sadyo Hride Avurudyate Tra Krite Bihi Susursavistakshana. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality, distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur aho rasika bhuvibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagvatam, the mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hiryantaksto Abhadrani Vidunoti Shuhitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, verse number 32. Tatra sanjayam asinam praprachodvigna manasa kavalgane kvagnastato vrido hinas chanitrayo. Translation. Maharaj Yudhisthira, full of anxiety, turned to Sanjaya, who was sitting there, and said, "O Sanjaya, where is our uncle, who is old and blind?" Text 33. Ambacha hata putrartha pitrivya kva gata surhit apimaya krita pragye hata bandhu chabaryaya asamsamana samalam gangayam dukito patat. Where is my well-wisher, Uncle Vidura, and Mother Gandhari, who is very afflicted due to all her sons' demise? My uncle Dhritarashtra was also very mortified due to the death of all his sons and grandsons. Undoubtedly, I am very ungrateful. Did he therefore take my offenses very seriously, and along with his wife drown himself in the Ganges? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Pandavas, especially Maharaj Yudhisthira and Arjuna, anticipated the after effects of the battle of Kurukshetra, and therefore Arjuna declined to execute the fighting. The fight was executed by the will of the Lord, but the effects of family agreement, as they had thought of it before, had come to be true. Maharaj Yudhisthira was always conscious of the great plight of his uncle Dhritarashtra and aunt Gandhari, and therefore he took all possible care of them in their old age and aggrieved conditions. When, therefore, he could not find his uncle and aunt in the palace, naturally his doubts arose, and he conjectured that they had gone down to the water of the Ganges. He thought himself ungrateful because when the Pandavas were fatherless, Maharaj Dhritarashtra had given them all royal facilities to live, and in return he had killed all Dhritarashtra's sons in the battle of Kurukshetra. As a pious man, Maharaj Yudhisthira took into account all his unavoidable misdeeds, and he never thought of the misdeeds of his uncle and company. Dhritarashtra had suffered the effects of his own misdeeds by the will of the Lord, but Maharaj Yudhisthira was thinking only of his own unavoidable misdeeds. This is the nature of a good man and devotee of the Lord. A devotee never finds fault with others, but tries to find his own and thus rectify them as far as possible. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So here are some descriptions of a genuine good person and a genuine devotee of the Lord. And these are exceptional qualities because most people refuse to take responsibility for mistakes. Or if they accept them, it's reluctantly. And the question of who is responsible is really important, because unless we can attribute responsibility, we can't really correct the situation. So, therefore, in Bhagavad Gita 5th chapter, 15th verse, Srila Prabhupada and Krishna explained this. Nadate kaschicit papam nachaiva sukritam vigu agnene navritam jnanam tena muyanti jantavaha. And Krishna says, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Sanskrit word vibhu means the Supreme Lord who is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He is also satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life. So, that's the first big point. The living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put in certain conditions of life. And thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. A living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord, and so, when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires. But the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is the constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma, or Supersoul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul as one can smell the flavor of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes, and God disposes. The individual is not, therefore, omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute, independent, living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymns therefore declare, Eso yuhi eva sadhu karma karayati tam yam ebhyo lokebhya unisisate esa u evasadu karma karayati yam adho ninisate. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so he may go to hell. Kositaki Upanishad 3.8. Agyo jantur aniso yam atmana sukadukayo ishvara perito gachet swargam vasvabram evacha. The living entity is completely dependent in his distress and happiness. By the will of the Supreme, he can go to heaven as a cloud is driven by the air. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of service to the Lord and is thus entrapped by nescience or ignorance. And under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for his conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutras 2.1.34 also confirm this. Vaishamya nan grinye na sapekshatvat tatahi darsayati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, though he appears to. So here is a very, very detailed and wonderful explanation of why the living entity is responsible for his own happiness or distress. This is also explained later on in the 13th chapter, where it says that Karya karyana kartritve hetur prakritir uchyate purushas sukadukanam bhoktritve hetur uchyate. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So, in a letter to Govinda Das in December 18, 1973, Prabhupada said, "We suffer due to our karma." Okay, so here it's very clear that we are the cause of our own sufferings and temporary enjoyments. And it's all based on our desire to avoid Krishna consciousness. And because of that desire, basically because of ignorance, we desire to be put into certain conditions of life. I remember one time I went to the house of this man in Holland, in Amsterdam. He was a wealthy guy, and while I was there, I saw his daughter practicing American, I guess we would call it bebop dancing. And I said to him, "So your daughter likes to dance?" He said, "Yes, she's crazy for your American dance." So here was a young girl, born in Holland, but she was practicing American bebop music and dancing. You see? So certain people desire to be put in certain conditions, bewildered by ignorance. And then the chain of action and reaction begins. So this is all due to ignorance. And ignorance is due to desiring the wrong thing. Actually, our desire should be to always be in contact with Krishna. Krishna Matir Astu. May you always remember Krishna. So if we're always thinking about Krishna and desiring to always be in the company of Krishna, then we can avoid ignorance, because as it's said in the Bhagavad Gita, anukulyena sankalpa pratikulyena varjanam. Raksisyaititi visvaso gopchitve varanam tata. Atmaniksepa karpanye sadvida saranam gati. So, this verse says that these are the 6 divisions or 6 symptoms of surrender. Accepting everything favorable for the service of Krishna, rejecting everything unfavorable, accepting Krishna as one's only protector and depending completely on the mercy of the Lord, and then not having any interest outside of Krishna consciousness, and always remaining humble and meek in the in devotional service. So, one should not be worried about making money or thinking of how one should keep the body and soul together. Prabhupada says, Krishna will see to that. That's if we're always engaged in a service. If we're just lazy and not doing anything, then Krishna's not going to see to that. But if we're always engaged actively in a service, Krishna will see to keeping the body and soul together. And we should always depend on the mercy of Krishna. One should feel helpless and should consider Krishna as the only basis for his progress in life. So, when we seriously engage in devotional service in this way, which is always being Krishna conscious, at once, Prabhupada says, we become free from the contamination of material nature. So, these are the 6 symptoms of surrender. And when we follow these 6 principles, Prabhupada says that simple surrender unto Krishna will save the person from unnecessarily wasting time. One can thus make all progress at once and be freed from all sinful reactions. So, we can see that it's ignorance only that we become entangled in the material world. We desire things out of ignorance, and then the whole chain of reaction of karma begins, and there's some happiness and there's some distress. It's always mixed, and we become more and more entangled. So, this verse 5:15 is extremely important to understand what our position is in the material world and also how to get out of it. So we see that the nature of a good person and devotee of the Lord, that is, he never finds fault with others, but tries to find his own faults and thus rectify them as much as possible. Very interesting point by Prabhupada. And Maharaj Yudhisthira was an example of this. He, as a pious man, Prabhupada says, Maharaj Yudhisthira took into account all his unavoidable misdeeds. And he never thought of the misdeeds of his uncle and company. Dhritarashtra had suffered the effects of his own misdeeds by the will of the Lord, but Maharaj Yudhisthira was thinking only of his own unavoidable misdeeds. That is the nature of a good man and devotee of the Lord. A devotee never finds fault with others, but tries to find his own faults and thus rectify them as far as possible. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavane Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Haribol. Are there any questions? Comments?
Yes, talking about the desire of living an entity. If living an entity, if the Krishna is the cause of all causes, then why should a living entity, and Krishna doesn't want living entity to get involved in forgetfulness of Krishna? So when then does the desire takes place?
Well, it all begins by seeing and hearing. I mean, if you live in let's say a black box, and you can't see anything, you can't hear anything, so there are no enticements that way. Let's say you were always born and always lived in this black box, and you didn't know anything else from the outside world. Well, you can imagine a lot of things, maybe, from previous lifetimes, but there wouldn't be any enticements. That's it. So, as soon as we begin to experience the world in different ways, there are enticements that attract us due to previous karma or due to a present situation. And when we have this attraction to something, we desire to get involved with it. And then Krishna helps you achieve that desire. So desire is due to our senses being attracted to something. It appears attractive. Like, for example, why does a fly land on a network, a geometrical network made by a spider? Because it's attractive. But as soon as it lands on it, it gets caught and is killed. So when we see something that we're attracted to, we desire to have that thing or enjoy that thing, just like the fly wants to enjoy sitting on this geometrical construct. That's a light show also in the sun. It's like it's shining. So flies are attracted by light and heat. So therefore, it's made in such a way that they will go to it and land on it, and of course they get killed. Is it the fault of the spider? No. Is it the fault of Krishna? No. It's the fly's fault that it got attracted to that thing. It wasn't able to think clearly, what is this exactly, before I land on it? Just like someone might say to you, oh, hey, Prabhu, would you like to eat this? This is really nice. And you look at it, and it looks really nice. So without thinking, you say yes. And after you eat it, they tell you, there was a ant in it. You say, well, I didn't notice that. Why didn't you tell me in the first place? So I wanted to see if you would eat it first. So you see, you didn't ask any questions, so you just ate it because you were attracted to it, and now you have eaten an ant. You see. So before we accept something, we should ask a whole bunch of questions and make sure it's acceptable. Just like I always teach the kids this in class, they have to ask a certain number of questions. So if someone comes up to you and says, oh, Prabhu, I have something really important to tell you. You say, okay, wait 1 second, can you answer the following questions? Is this thing something that's going to help me in Krishna consciousness or not help me? Answer, no. Is this something that will inspire me to chant more, dance more, and be more serious about Krishna consciousness? No. Then I don't want to hear it. Right? So, if you say, oh yeah, what is it? They'll tell me, and then all of a sudden they start talking about somebody else's nonsense to you, right? So now that corrupts your mind. So we should always ask questions before we accept something or hear something. Just like one time, and this was in Berkeley when I was temple president there, this man showed up, and then he came a couple days, and then one day he wanted to see me, so he came and was talking to me, and he said, I want to live in a temple. I said, oh, okay. I said, can you tell me a little bit about your background? He said, well, I'm an initiated devotee. Oh, I said, what's your name? He said, so-and-so Das. I said, who initiated you? He said, well, so-and-so Maharaj initiated me. I said, okay. And what has been your experience? I mean, have you lived in a temple? He said, yeah, I lived in a temple. I said, okay, man, how long did you live in a temple? He said, I lived in a temple 4 years. I said, oh, that's good. What years were those? So we were in like 1980s, right? He said, oh, well, he said 1978, 79. Oh, I said, and how many years did you stay in a temple? He said 4 years. I said, okay. So we were like 1989, 1990. Right? I said, and what happened between that? I said, oh, I went outside. I was outside. I said, oh, okay. Outside where? He said, well, I was in Colorado. I said, oh, okay. I said, what were you doing? He said, well, I was doing different things. I said, can you tell me specifically something you were doing? He said, well, I was in prison. I said, oh, okay. Why'd you go to prison? He said, well, I did something wrong. I said, can you tell me specifically what you did wrong? He said, well, I got in a little problem with somebody. I said, was that somebody a man or a woman? He said, it was a woman. I said, how old was she? He said, 4 years old. I said, oh, I said, did you molest a child? He said, yes. I said, okay, you can't stay in the temple. Now, if I didn't ask all those questions, if I was like, oh, great, he's going to be a new devotee, he's going to stay in the temple. The guy's a child molester. I can't let him stay in the temple. He's been a convicted child. He's a sex offender. You see? So we have to ask questions, right? You just can't accept something because it looks nice. So it's ignorance that puts us into trouble. So oftentimes we accept things just because it's attractive. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, well, putting this word in the beginning, I mean, God created, well, we're not created, obviously, we're eternal, but according to general way of thinking, we all created equally. It means everybody else was given chance to be good. So it's why some other people they turn bad and the other people they
well, it's just like the person that offered you something to eat. You didn't ask any question. You ate it, but now you've eaten an ant, right? So you didn't want to do that, but you did it out of ignorance. You see. So as soon as that happens, then you say, oh, well, I ate an ant. Maybe I could eat some more then, why not? It didn't taste bad at all. It tasted good. I didn't even notice it. You see, this is what demons do. They convince you to do something wrong on the plea that it's good for you, or it's more fun, or it's more enjoyable. So young kids are the most vulnerable because they don't have too much experience in life. So when someone's offering them, it's just like a kid goes to a birthday party, a devotee kid, and they have a birthday cake, and they offer it to everyone with ice cream, and everyone's eating it, so they just go ahead and eat it. They don't ask any questions, but of course it has eggs in it. The ice cream has gelatin in it. So now they've eaten meat products. Did it unwittingly because they didn't have experience. They didn't ask any questions.
It's like for the soul, living in the soul. If we put aside our conditioning, we just go to the original nature of the soul is actually is such an ananda. It's called knowledge too. So where that ignorance comes from,
Attraction, Prabhu. Attraction. There was this one devotee. He had a really nice wife, really nice kids. But then he met some woman and had illicit sex with her. And then his wife divorced him, separated from him. And he was really sad. So one day I was talking to him and I said, Prabhu, don't you feel sorry for what happened? And he said, yeah. And then a little smile came on his face. His head was a little down, but a smile came on his face. He said, but she was so beautiful. So, you see, I mean, he didn't really regret it. He didn't, and the proof is he went back to that other woman. After all that. Yeah. Just like a man was walking down the street and he saw this big pile of stool. And he saw a stool. You know, it could have been horse dung or cow dung or human dung, who knows. And there was a worm in it. So he said, oh, that poor worm. So he picks the worm up and puts it on some nice green grass, you know. And he thought, let me just see what the worm does. You know what the worm did? Went back to the stool. You see. So, this is the thing, you know, it's just like, you know, Dracula. If Dracula bites someone and sucks their blood, you know, then they become a Dracula also. So this is what the demons do. They like, you know, what, like, for example, in Africa, you have the, Boko. Yeah, right? Yeah, they're terrorists, right? They're Muslim terrorists, right? What do? They like to invade Christian villages, kill some men, and take women and rape them and keep them as sex slaves. Why do they do that? You see, it is a technique. It's a technique that it's not only Muslims that have done it throughout history. It's always been like that. When you invade a village or a city, you kill the men, and you rape the women, and take control of them, right, and use them, right? So why do people do that? You know, well, because once they rape the women, especially if they're young, the women become attached to them, right? And then some of those women were freed by the Nigerian army, right? But they continued being Muslims. You see, it's the whole. That's what the demons do. They want to contaminate someone. Once that person is contaminated, then they got them under their control. And the way they do it is by overpowering them and forcing them to become like slaves, and using them like they're just nobody. Right. Yes. Yes. Well, it's limited free will. It's limited, right? Limited to either you accept Krishna or you reject Krishna. And either way, you're going to be controlled. If you accept Krishna, you're controlled by Krishna. If you reject Krishna, you're controlled by Krishna's material energy, the three modes of material nature. Either way, you're going to be controlled. You're never really free. But if you accept Krishna, then you get freedom from birth, death, old age, disease. You get real freedom. You know, you get an eternal body, never deteriorates. And so that body is made for transcendental ecstasy all the time. No, you have a choice. It's to teach you there was the wrong choice. We learn in two ways. One is by following Krishna consciousness, and everything becomes better and better. And the other way is by not following Krishna consciousness, everything gets worse and worse. Have what? Oh, you mean they fall down? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, but they don't blame anybody. That's what we learned today. As soon as you blame someone, then you feel resentment and you want to get revenge, and all those things come into play. It is a ticket to a good life. Go back to Godhead. No, now, see, the illusion that you have is thinking that there is a good life in the material world, in the material body. That's an illusion. It's not true. But that doesn't mean you're going to be free from suffering. Free from illusion, yes.
But to other people's point of view, it's like you go to suffering. And you say, well, I'm just happy. He didn't suffer very
Well, he was always thinking of the Lord. He was always thinking of the Lord. And the Lord protected him.
Because you suffer because of karma.
Yes.
The pain you feel because of karma.
Now, if someone beats you in 21 markets, are you going to feel some suffering, or are you going to be in ecstasy?
If for a conditioned soul, you feel pain.
Yeah, but see, that he can tolerate that. He can tolerate it. It's like Prabhupada was tolerating so much pain in his latter days because of his diabetes and so forth. You can tolerate it. But is the pain there? Yes, it's there. But you can tolerate it. Just like Stalin. When Stalin got sick in the early 1950s, he had to get an operation. But he didn't trust anyone. So he refused to take a sedative because he couldn't trust any of the doctors. And he just watched them operate on him. And it was extremely painful. But he had killed so many people, he couldn't trust anyone. So he refused to take the sedative. He just suffered the pain and he was looking, and it freaked out the doctors. Because they knew they were hurting him. You know, they had to cut him up and do some different things. And he just tolerated the pain. But that is because he was afraid that someone might kill him while he's under sedation. But the devotee, because he's thinking of Krishna all the time, he can tolerate terrible pain, knowing that this is just my body, it's not me. But the pain is there. Pain is there, but they can tolerate it.
In the old thing, actually, really makes sense to me that actually desire is due to attraction. That makes a lot of sense, that attraction. Because Christians attract, Krishna is attraction.
Everyone's looking for Krishna.
Exactly. Whether materially, spiritually.
Yeah.
So the attraction is actually the cause of falling down or whatever you can say.
It's the beginning of it. Yeah, you become attracted to something, either because of previous karma, or because something looks beautiful. Like Prabhupada tells a story of two ugly people looking at each other, right? A man and a woman. And the man says to the woman who's really ugly, I've never seen anyone as beautiful as you before. And he's really ugly too. She said, well, I think you're handsome also. But they're both ugly. But, it's just, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right? So they see something that attracts them.
So attraction is manipulation.
Yeah.
I remember when I was They said don't believe in God. I say, don't believe in God. Who is God in you? And that came to my mind. God means attraction.
He's the most attractive, Krishna, because of the six opulences.
No, and for somebody that doesn't know Krishna, I said, God, the power of God is attraction. You can't do what you want, you must be attracted to something.
Yeah. Well, you can see it in two ways. One is you see the person and they're attractive. Two is you see what the person has done and it's attractive.
Could be the qualities,
Could be what they've done. Like Krishna has produced the sun, the moon, all these things, right? Just like if you look at a painting, there's two ways of looking at it. One is you see the contrast of colors and shapes and so forth, right? And the other is you think, wow, this is an amazing painting. The person who made this must be an amazing guy. Yeah. Yeah. Colors, shapes, all attractive. So there's two ways of looking. One is the thing itself is very attractive. The other is whoever made this must be a very amazing person. Right? Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. No, nothing's ever finished.
Why are you for today?
No, it's not. It's only beginning today.
Yeah, I will tell people like God means attraction. No matter what you do,
That's the name of the most attractive.